Hello and welcome. This is Randy with Excel for Freelancers, and in this week's training we're going to go over Project Manager Part 3, where I've got the ability to now add individual tasks to our projects, and we can also set the status of individual tasks. We also have those statuses reflected on the schedule with different colors. We also have the ability to add attachments and also show thumbnails of those attachments. We've got a lot to cover, so let's get started. All right, thanks so much. I'm really glad to have you here. Thank you. I appreciate all your support, your shares, your likes. It's been really amazing. If you have not done so yet, please go ahead and subscribe. We'll give you a brand new free training video each and every Tuesday here on our channel. So you want to make sure to subscribe and click that notification bell so we can get you those videos right away and you can know when there's a new video. Also, if you have not yet, we do have a brand new 100 application zip file where all 100 of my previous applications are available for you in a single download. So that's a very low cost on that for promotion. So I'll put the links down below. That helps keep these videos free each and every week. So I do appreciate that. All right, let's get started with the training. We've got a lot to cover in this part 3 of Project Manager. We've got tasks, as I showed you briefly. We have the ability to assign tasks, give each task a specific name, and of course assign it to a specific resource that is available. So as we add additional resources here onto a specific project, we then have those resources available to us in the assigned to. So that's a great little feature. We're going to show you how we did that. We also have the ability to add a task name as well as a specific date for a specific task, and of course the durations. And we also have the ability to set the status of that task, and that could be incomplete or in process or perhaps even completed. And of course there's a color combination based on those different statuses. So we're going to show you how we did that. And of course those are also reflected in the schedule here. We've got different gradients now, whether it's going to be the darker green or lighter green or possibly yellow for those in process, so that you can see individual tasks within the job for individual resources, just as we had that. So we're going to show that to you. We have also added the ability to add attachments. And of course, we want to see the attachments preview. If there are pictures, if they're PNG, GIF, or perhaps JPEG, we can see the preview here. And you'll see we also have these row numbers. Of course, where do those come from? Those are normally going to be hidden, but I just displayed them for you so that we can see that those are coming directly from our database. And why do we do that? Because if I'm going to delete an attachment, I need to know what row in the database, in the data sheet, to delete. So we bring those rows over, and normally we just color them blue. So we hide them simply by changing the font color, and then they're hidden so the users can't see them, but we know that they're there. And we use them for our purposes. Now I'll go ahead and set them to black so that we can work with them, we can see them. But normally when you'll have your completed application, you'll want to hide these row numbers. All right, we have the ability to add attachments simply by selecting any type of attachments and scrolling down, and we can simply insert that and it'll automatically select it, and we can see the picture there. We can have the ability to open any type of attachment just by clicking open, and it'll open the attachments here. We also have the ability to delete attachment. We can easily just select it, delete attachment, and it will be deleted and automatically refreshed. So it's a very easy to work with attachments. Let's go ahead and show you just how we did that into the VBA. And of course, the first thing we want to do is I want to refresh this list. I want this list to contain only attachments from a specific project. For example, let's say we have another project. Let's select project number 11 and we add an attachment here, and though I want to make sure that that is not associated with only this particular project. So how do we associate project number 11? So when we load this, only that particular attachment is going to be added. Well, we want to make sure that, of course, in our attachment sheets here, that we have a project number. That's critical. We want to have a project number that's associated with a specific attachments. That's how we filter it. And then what we do is we take that project number and we put it in the criteria here. That is going to be used for our advanced filter. We always run advanced filters, and then we run that advanced filter and we bring it here. And then we take those results and then we bring them right back into here. And you'll see if we were to add in project number 5, which has a lot of attachments, and you'll see now we've put 5 in the criteria, and the results are all of them except for the one that has 11 as a project. So that is how we do that. And now let's go ahead and get into the VBA so we can see exactly how VBA handles that for us. And we have a few macros associated with that. The first one here is the attachment refresh. And basically what I want to do is what I just showed you. I want to take that project number, I want to put it in the criteria, and I want to run an advanced filter. Now, of course, our project manager sheet is sheet 1, and our attachment sheet is sheet 5. So we have a macro here called attachments refresh. And we're going to dimension a few things. A project number, that's very important. The project attachment row, we need to know what row we're focused on. And because in fact, what I really want to do, here's one thing, let me show you here in the sheet. What I want to do is I want to take these attachments here, but the order in which they're displayed, I wanted to start with this order. This particular attachment, this PNG, row 7, I want that to be the first. That was the last one added. So I want the last one here, and then down, down, down. So I want it in reverse order. See, the orders go from 7 to 3. It's actually from 3 to 7 here. So we're going to reverse the order. We're going to start at the last row and go up to the first row. So that's what we're going to do in reverse order. And that is so that the last attachment that we added, so the most recent attachment always appears at the top and not at the bottom. That's just more of a preference, so you can do what you like. Okay, so keep that in mind. So we need to always understand what specific row of the project attachment row, whether it's 21, 22, 23. So we need to keep track of that as well. So that would be the project attachment row. The last attachment row and the last filter row. We need both of those. That's important. Of course, in the attachments, we need to know what the last row is of our total attachments, and we need to know the last row of our filtered results. So that's very important. All right, moving along in our VBA code, we are going to stop the calculation. That turns off our calculations and screen updating. So that's our code is going to run a lot faster when we do that. But the project number, you know already, is in I4. Project number is in I4. We need that. It's very important. We're going to need that defining. So that comes directly from right here, I4. So that gets pulled out and defined in this variable here. I've defined it as long, but you could do just as well as a string. We're not working with it. Either one would work fine. We do want to clear any old attachments in sheet 1. That's important because we want to, if we're refreshing the list, we want to make sure that all of this information gets cleared. So this information gets cleared right away. And that's the first thing we do on sheet 1. So that's D21 all the way through G26, including the database row numbers. So we want to make sure to include those numbers. So we have that here. The next up, we're going to set the project row. That's a starting row. That's the starting row because we're going to move one by one by one. So we're going to start at 21 and then move all the way down depending upon how many there are. And of course, there's going to be a limit of 26. We can't go beyond that. Remind me, I'll explain what these names are down here soon. Okay, so moving on. Now we have with sheet 5, we're going to be primarily focused on the attachment sheet. That is sheet 5. First thing I want to do is I want to clear any previous advanced filter, and I want to clear any data, any results. So we got to clear out those fields. And so what does that entail? That entails these fields right here in the attachments. We're going to clear out I3 and we're going to clear out L3 through P and all the way down. So we want to clear that out because we're going to run a brand new filter. So we want that brand new filter to have new data. So we want to clear out any old data here with this line. I3, of course, is our project number. That's going to be our criteria. The last attachment row is going to be the last row of all of our attachments. When we run that advanced filter, we need to know how many rows to cover. And then of course, if the last row is less than 3, that means there are no attachments at all. If there are no attachments, we don't need to continue with the rest of it. We can just skip, go to node data and go right to here. We can skip all that because nothing is going to be brought over. All right, assuming that there is data, we're ready to run our advanced filter. Now we're going to start out in A2. Remember, we always want to include the header rows. We must include the header. A2, we're going to run it through E, and then the last row, we're going to have a criteria of I2 through I3, and then we're going to have the results of that filter all the way from L2 through P2. And we do that in the code, in this one line of code. We're going to run the advanced filter, of course, with the main data I just mentioned. We're going to copy that, and the criteria is going to be I2 through I3. We're going to copy to the range L2 through P2, and the unique is going to be true. That's going to run our advanced filter. Now that we've run our advanced filter, we have the data. We have the data here automatically, but I just need to get the last row. Of course, if that last row is less than 3, then again, we have no results. We can skip to no data. And we do that in the code right here. First, we get the last filter row using column L and XLUp. That's going to get us our last row of the results, our last filter row results. Okay, those are the results. Next up, if the last filter row is less than 3, then exit the sub. We can exit it. We can also go to no data. Let's go to no. And why do we do that? Then go to no data. It's very important. I make this mistake. Look, I stop the calculations here. If I exit out, our calculations are going to be stopped. This is an easy error to make, right? So I've stopped the calculations. That means that the calculations are not on. That means screen updating is not on. So if I exit the sub without resetting the calculations, let me just show you real quick, without going enabling events, calculation automatic, or screen out, without doing that, then it's going to create issues. So make sure that you don't make the same error that I did, which is easy to make. So it's easy to fix too. So if you notice things aren't working right, you got to look through that. We can't exit the sub, so it's much easier to go to no data and then reset the calculations as opposed to exiting, because that's important. We want to reset. If we've stopped the calculations, we must always reset. We cannot exit out of it without doing that. So it's actually good that the error came up, because it's probably an easy error to make for all of us. So I wanted just to show you that. Okay, next up, we are now that we know that we have filter data, if not, then we can go to the filter. Actually, the exit sub was here, right? Then let's say go to no data. All right, make that very clear. All right, the filter row, we're going to go in reverse order. So we're starting on the last filter row and we're going to 3, step -1. That is the reverse order, so that our most current attachments appear at the top of our list. That's just the way I'd like to see it. When a user adds an attachment, I want to see it appear at the top. If you want it to appear at the bottom, then all you need to do is go from 3. Then if you wanted the other order, just go 3 to last filter row, and then of course you can get rid of the step -1. You don't need that. But for our purposes, I want to show you something new, so we'll go ahead and do that. All right, continuing on. Now we have in this row sheet 1, D, and the project. Remember, this starts at 21. It's going to go up D and the project attachment row through G and the project attachment row. This line, what does it equal? It equals M and the filter row through P and the filter row. So what is that? Well, that's simply this. All I'm saying is that D through G here, D through G equals, right here, equals the last one, we're starting to last, equals L through P. So all we're doing is taking this information here, this line L through P, and we're going to bring it right over to here, the first line of code. Now we're done with that. Now I'm going to skip one line, and I'm going to go to the next line, and we're going to go to row 22. We're going to do the same thing, but in this case, we're going to go 22 D through G equals, and of course we're going the next line up here, which would be this row, row 6. So that's what our loop's going to do. We're going to do that for every single attachment in this filter, the results there. All right, so we're going to go through that. So then we're going to increase the project. Remember, it starts on 21, but now we need to move to 22. And of course, I want to put something, again, I made the mistake again. Exit sub, we cannot exit out. Go to no data, all right? That's very important because no data. When we're stopping calculate, now if we don't stop calculations, if we don't use this, then we can exit the sub, right? That's fine. We can do that. But since we're using stop calculations so that it's faster, we cannot exit out without actually getting to reset the calculation. So that's important. All right. So now it says if the project attachment row equals 27, then go to no data. Why is that? Well, I just want to basically get out of this loop. Of course, you can exit the 4 too. We can simply do exit 4 as well. So the reason is that we want to not go over any rows beyond 27, beyond 26. So if it's 27, we want to exit out. Okay, so it's important because 26 is the last row. We're only allowing, in this particular, 6 different attachments in this small table. Of course, all the attachments, of course, will be here. All right, so moving on, we have that, and that's the last thing. So that's how we load data, and of course, we reset the calculations, and then that's it. That's how we load the attachments. So when we run this code, it's going to automatically clear and load the attachments in very quickly. Now, I add this in that particular macro. What I've done is I've added attachment refresh. I've added that in the project load. So when you go into the project load here, let's go into the project macros here and go into project load here, you'll see attachment refresh is located in the project load. We have different things to load now, not just the project. We're going to load the resources, we're going to load the attachments, and we're going to load the tasks. So there's 3 different tables, 3 different things to load. Remember, we're going to load the resources, we're going to load the attachments, and we're going to load the tasks now. So all 3 of those come from different tables. Resources, attachments, and tasks. They all come from different tables, but they all must be loaded. And of course, they're all based on the project number. So that's very, very important. We're going to go over that in just a minute. So now we know how we get attachments to load in here, but how do we add an attachment? When we click this button, if you'll take a look and we click on the assign macro, we will see that there's a macro called attachment add that has been added. So how do we add that? Well, it's very simple, just a few lines of code. Back into the VBA under the attachments module, project attachments, we will see we have a macro called attachment add. We can go through this macro now. The first thing we're going to need to open a file folder. So we have to dimension file folder as a file dialog. That's important. That's going to create that dialog that pops up. And what is the file dialog? Well, it's this thing right here. When we click it, we'll see something open up. This is a file dialog right here. That is a file dialog. So that's important. That's what we need for us to have to browse for a specific file to attach. So we need that file dialog. All right, next up, dim the file name as a string. I need to know the long file name. I also need to know the file type. And I don't think we need destination file folder. We need to know the attachment file path. I need to know the entire file path. And of course, the project number, that's very important. Here I've dimensioned it as a string, sometimes long, but either one, it's probably, in this case, we're probably safer to do it as a string. We're not using, unless of course you use the max function inside Excel, inside the VBA. Okay, the next up, username, we don't need that. That's something I don't need. And the attachment row is long. Okay, if sheet 1 B3 value equals 2, then project save. Why is that important? Let's look at that. As we know, B2, right? B2, it should be B3. B3. I'll make sure that's B3. B3 tells us whether it's a new project or not. B3, if B3 is true, that means it's a new project. If it's a new project, I don't have a project number yet, right? When we click add project, we don't have any project number associated, right? But in order to save any attachments, I need to assign a project number. Without a project number, we would be unable to save that attachment because every single attachment requires a project number. So we know where to assign that. So it's important that we actually save the project. If the user has not saved it, we should save it for them. So in the code, I've done just that because B3 is going to tell us if it's true, it's a new project. If it's an existing, this is going to be false. So we need to check for that if it's true. So into the attachments, we need to know if B3 is true, then run the macro that saves the project because we need to lock in the project number. That's very important. So we want to make sure to do that. The project number then is sheet 1 I4. We know that's the project number. Okay, we're going to start out. We're going to set the file folder as an application file dialog, MSO file dialog file picker. We want to select a specific file, so we're going to use the file dialog file picker. And then with the file folder, we're going to do things. We're going to set a title, select file to attach, and of course we really don't need any type of filter, so it's going to be all types of files. We're going to allow the user to add, sometimes you want just pictures, or sometimes PDF, or sometimes just Excel, but in this case we want any type of file, so we're going to use the asterisk here, so it's going to be any type of file. And of course, if for some reason the user has not selected any item on OK, we just want to go to no selection, which is going to skip all of this and just go right to here. Next up, the file name. Once they've selected a file, the file name is going to be the directory of the attachment file path. What is the attachment file path? That is the whatever item they've selected. That is the full file path of the attachment, the full file path. Everything, all the folders, all the name, and all of the type and the extension, or everything is in that full file path. But I want to extract just the file name also. Because I want the file name and I want the file location, I want it all. So if we load a file here, right, I want the file name, I want the full file path, and I want the type. I want all of that information. So we're going to put that into specific variables. So the file path is the full file path, and I can extract the file name using the directory function and then attachment file path. That is going to get us the file name. And of course, the file type is simply, we're going to look for the period using the in string, and then we're going to subtract the file name, the right part of the file name, using in string, which is going to find the period, and then it's going to extract all of the remaining characters after the period. That is going to get us our file type. So we need to know whether it's JPG, PNG, XLS, or whatever it is. I want to define that file type because I want to put that file type also here in the file type. And of course, we have to accommodate some file types have 4 characters while others have 3. So we need to make sure that our code accommodates for that. And this one does automatically. It will accommodate for that. All right, now that we have all the information, we can put that in. And if we're going to focus on sheet 5, sheet 5 is our attachment sheets. And I want to find the first available row in the attachment sheets. So we're going to use the attachment rows equal to dot range because we've already associated with sheet 5. We're using column A because that's where our project numbers are located in that sheet. And XLF plus 1. This is going to get us our last row with a value. Adding 1 is going to get the first available row after that. So that's our attachment row. Next, all we need to do is place in the data. A would go the project number. Column B would be the file name. C would be the file type, D would be the file path, and of course E would be the row. So we're going to take all that information and put it right here into the attachments: the project number, the attachment name, the type, the full path, and of course the row is a formula. And of course that's important in case they get sorted or anything, or something gets inserted or something gets deleted. Our rows are always going to be dynamic and they're going to be accurate. So it's important to use a formula and not a fixed row number, because that could change as soon as an item gets deleted. Then they all get adjusted. So we want to make sure that it's a formula always, because when it gets brought over, I need to know the accurate row numbers in case I'm going to be deleting them. Okay, moving on. So all that information. Next up, I want to run the attachment refresh. I want to run that macro again. That's the macro I just went over with you. And what is that going to do? It's going to delete everything here, and it's going to take, because we've only added it, all we've done is added that attachment to the last row. But I want to run this filter again to include this brand new item, which would be here, run it through our criteria, run it through our filter, and then bring it over and add that into here. So we run that refresh macro again. So this way, when we add an attachment, automatically that attachment gets automatically added to the list, and it gets put at the top of the list right here. So that's how we go. And of course, if we want to delete it, I just select and delete it, and it gets automatically deleted. And you'll see the rows update, the previews still work, and everything works just fine. Okay, speaking of delete, why don't we get into the deleting of that so we know exactly how that works. And that would be right here, this macro right here, attachment delete. Of course, I need to know the selected row. I need to know what row they're on. That's very important. If I don't know what row, I won't know what information. And then of course, I need to know the row in the attachment table as well. So we need to know the selected row and the row in the attachments. What are those two values? Well, the selected row is whatever row we select here, 22, 23, 24, or whatever. And of course, the attachment row would be this one right here, G4, located G24, and the 4 would be the row. That is the row in our attachments, in this case 4, of where the attachment is located. So if we're going to be deleting it, I need to know what row to delete here. So we need those two things in the variables. All right, moving on. Next up, so we have in our delete, now we have those information. We need to make sure that B7 is not empty, right? So B7, what is B7? B7 is where our selected attachment row is located. Our code will change that row into B7 as we select it. It's also the same row number that we use for conditional formatting. And I can show you that real quick, although we've been over it many times. Conditional formatting, manage rules. And if we take a look at it, all we need to do is we're going to say D21, which is the first row in our table, is not empty. That's one condition, right? It's not empty. And the second condition is B7 must be the row number. So when those two conditions are accurate and true, then we want to color the cell, give it a format of a dark blue, and then a font of a white and a bold font. Okay, so that's how we do that. And of course, our VBA takes care of placing on selection change. Every time we make a selection in this range, that row number is going to be put right here in B7. That row number is critical because we need to know what row the user wants to delete, what information the user wants to delete. So we need to know what row they actually selected. So B7 cannot be blank. If it is, we should exit out of the sub. So we did that just here. If B7 equals empty, then a message box, please select an attachment to delete, exit the sub. So we're going to exit out of that. Otherwise, we do have a row in B7, and we're going to set that as selected row. Selected row is B7. We need to know that. And next up, I also want to make sure another thing. I want to make sure that once we have the row, there's actually a value. There's actually a row number to delete. So G and the selected row must not also be empty as well. It cannot be empty. So we need to run a check on that. If G and the selected row value equals empty, then we also please select an attachment to delete. Okay, that means there's no row. For some reason, G was empty. That just covers it, our tracks, and make sure that there's no bugs. All right, next up, we want to delete if there was a specific attachment thumbnail that has been displayed, and I'll go over that code with you. If there's a thumbnail, for example, if we're deleting something here and it has a thumbnail, I want to remove the thumbnail as well. When I delete it, I want that thumbnail to be gone as well. So we want to delete that, and we've wrapped that just in case there's no thumbnail that's being displayed. I've wrapped that on air, resume next, and on air, go to 0, just so there's no bugs, just in case that thumbnail is not displayed or not present. All right, next up, the selected row. I've done this already. We don't need that. The attachment table row is G and the selected row. We need to know what row in the attachments table that we're going to be deleting, and of course that's into G in the selected row. Next up, all we need to do is delete the row, sheet 5, that is our attachment sheet, the row that we're going to be deleting, and quotation marks, the colon, end quotation marks, and the attachment table row, entire row delete. Now again, we're going to run the refresh, right? Once I delete something, I want to refresh that list so that that deleted item no longer appears in the list. I don't want it to appear in the list anymore. I don't want it to appear here, so all we need to do is run the macro that refreshes the list. I went over that, and it's going to be gone from that because it's actually gone in the originated table here, so it wouldn't show up as we refresh it here in the list. All right, so we run that refresh, and next up, I want to select D21. I just want to select automatically the first row in the list. That way it clears it out, and then I want to run the macro that displays the thumbnail if that is a type of file that has a thumbnail. In fact, let's take a look at that. We can find that. All we need to do is just go to definition here, and we can see it, find it right here. All you have to do is just highlight something and then right click and look for the definition here. That's all I did here on a specific macro to locate it. All right, the attachment display thumbnail. This is where we get displayed a little thumbnail when we have pictures. And what is that? That's just that little picture that we have displayed here, then when we select it, it displays. So let me show you how to do that. When you select something, then something happens. Well, first of all, what happens on that? Let's go into the project manager because selection change is where things are happening. Okay, on selection here, in fact, I should put something here. Let me put a little notation here. On selection of an attachment. Okay, if the user selects D21 through F26, then something should happen. And also we want to make sure that D and the target row does not equal empty, right? I don't want anything to run. If they select here and there's no value in D in the selector row, I really don't want anything to happen. I only want something to happen when they actually select a specific row where D has a value. So that's important. All right, so that's why we run that additional check here. So that cannot be empty as well. So those two conditions, the user has made a selection change. Remember, selection change, just a selection. Then what do I want to happen? Well, I want two things to happen. The first thing is I want to make B7 our target row. Remember, we just went over that. That's how we got the conditional formatting. B7 is where our attachment row, the row that the user has selected, that goes into B7. And next I want to run the macro attachment display thumbnail. And again, if I want to go directly to this, right click and click definition. It's a little bit off the screen, sorry. Definition, right click definition, that's all I'm doing. And it's going to bring us right to this macro. Okay, so now we know how we get this macro to run, but now let's go ahead and go through it. Of course, we have the same thing. We have file type, we have file path, we have the thumbnail type, that's important, right? That's like the same as a file type. Project number, okay, and the main application, we don't need that. All right, so with sheet 1, we're focused on that. Again, we're going to delete any specific thumbnail that has appeared. Why do we do that? Well, if for some reason I have a thumbnail that's appearing and I select another one, I want to delete the current one before I display a new one. So it's important to display the current one first. All right, back into the code. B7, of course, if it's empty, then we're going to exit the sub. That's important. We want to exit out. B7 is very important. We need to know the row of our attachments. If there is no row, then we can just escape out of that. All right, the attachment row is equal to B7. We're going to set that variable under attachment row. The project number is going to be I4. That's probably not that important. Okay, next up, the file type is the lowercase. We can get the file type. We want to make sure we get the file type because that's going to help us. F in the attachment row. F in the attachment row. It's located there, right? We know the attachment row, so F is where our file type is located, column F right there. All right, so the attachment table row we know is in G. We went over that a few times. And on error, go to know if there's an error in this file path or anything like that, the file path is not found. But in this case, the file path is sheet 5D and the attachment row, sheet 5D and the attachment row. That is the full file path, right? We know the attachment row is here, right? So if I want the full file path, we can get it from here in E, or we can get it from here. I wanted to show you here in D. Both work just fine. Okay, but I want the original. I want to go with the original data just in case the users mess something up or something. I want to pull from the original data. It's important, so we're just going to pull it from right from there. All right, so we've got the original data. We've got the full file path. So now we can display the picture if it's a picture type file. So that's the next thing we're going to run to. If the file type is JPEG, PNG, GIF, JPEG, or BMP, then we can display a thumbnail. Of course, on error, go to if there's some kind of an error with displaying or the file path. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to insert a picture using that full file path. That's the full file path. And we're going to assign it a name. I always wanted to assign it the same name so it makes it very easy to delete. I want one name for this file. It's easy to work with and it's easy to delete because I know we only need to delete one. So we're always going to give it the same name, and that's called attachment thumb. Once we have assigned that name, we can then work with it. So with shapes attachment, with this brand new picture shape that we've created, we can do a few things. The first thing, I want to make it visible. I want to lock the aspect ratio. I want to set the left position, sheet 20. Why did I go sheet 1 here? Why? Because I've already defined sheet 1 up here, so why must? Because here we have another width. This is width shapes. So if I remove this, right, it's going to think that we're working with the attachment thumb, that width. So when we have width within a width, we actually have to specifically define white sheet. Once we are out of this width, we can then use the width sheet 1 again. So once we are out of it. So we need to define sheet 1. It's very important because the dots are assuming it's with the attachment thumb. Okay, so we're going to set the left position to H21 and the top position to H21 as well. That's going to set it right here under H21. And then we're going to move it down a little bit, and we're going to move it to the left a little bit. Now I just need to know if the width is greater than the height, then set the width to 90. Else set the height to 80. This is going to set our limit so that we have a fixed, whether it's bigger horizontally or vertically, this sets the maximum width and maximum height for the file. We've already locked the aspect ratio, so that's going to make sure the picture does not get distorted. Next up, I'm going to move it just a little bit to the right and just a little bit down. Left minus left would be to the left. Minus the top would be going upward in an upward direction, okay? But we're going down, so it's the positive. So that's going to move it down. If you can see when we display a picture, it's a little bit down and a little bit to the right of H. So that's how that works. That's how we get that GIF to display. And if we wanted it to position it lower, we would just increase those numbers. You can play with those numbers exactly how you want. All right, that is it for displaying thumbnails. We've covered attachment open. We haven't covered this. Attachment open. I want to open this file. I want to click here and I want to open it. So I just want to click the open and it's automatically going to open that GIF file. And so how do we do that? Well, we can do that with just a few lines of code. The first thing I did was assign a macro to this button. If you click assign macro, and you'll see the attachment open, it's here. That is the macro that I have assigned there. Let's take a look inside this macro. With sheet 1, we're going to focus on that. The selected row is long. We need to know that. I also need to know the attachment table and the file path, the same type of variables that we use when we delete it. Again, B7, we must have a value in that. That's the row, so that's very important. The selected row is going to be B7. That's going to be the selected, we should say a selected attachment row, okay, because that's the selected attachment row. The attachment table row, of course, is in G. We did go over that a few times already. The file path, sheet 5D, same as before, the original file path from sheet 5, which is our original attachments database. That's the file path. If the directory file path equals empty, or the file path is equals empty, then we're going to exit the sub. This just ensures that if there's an error with opening it, we're going to exit the sub. It keeps from having bother. Otherwise, we're ready to open this work. Follow hyperlink. We're going to follow the hyperlinked file path. So whatever type of file that is, we're going to open the file hyperlink, and this is actually the line of code that will actually open our file regardless of the file type. It'll use the Windows default program to open that file. So whatever your default programs are, that's what it's going to use. And that is the macro for attach open. All right, moving on, I think we've covered everything in attachments. Let's go over it briefly. We have covered how to add attachments in the code that concern, how to refresh and get those attachments into the project table there. We've had to show how to display the thumbnails there. We've had to open the attachments and delete the attachments and show all this is nothing for now. Maybe in the future I'll want to show all. All right, attachments open we've had, and the attachments delete. So we've covered all of those. Great. So we've got those covered. Now let's move on to the tasks. That's something brand new, so that we've got this on here. And now we know, but before I get to the task, let me just show you why we have a linked resources here, and they're linked here. Why are they linked? I want to automatically type in some names. For example, if I've got Peter Rabbit, I want to make it easier. I just want to type in PE, and I want it to autocomplete. Now I've got an entire video on autocomplete, which is great. So if you haven't checked that out, and you want to learn more about autocomplete, search for my channel, but I'll go over it real quickly. The idea is that there's something called break the chain. Don't break the chain. There's a chain that must be contained. So for example, what I need to do is I need to create a link between these fields and these fields right here. I need to create some kind of a link, and I've done that with a hidden link. So there's actually a link, there's spaces between that. So this way, when I type in PE Peter Rabbit, automatically that's going to show up because I have values. There's a chain of values of cells, even if it's just a space. So if we create a space here, space here, space here, space here, make sure there's a space, and we have some type of space or some type of text that leads all the way down to at least the first value in this list, it's going to auto-complete. So that's great. So as long as we have the same values in the same column, and I copy them, and then I paste in the links, but we're going to have to paste in the links here. So when I paste in those links, they're going to be dynamic. So now all we need to do, instead of selecting from the drop-down list, all I need to do is just select it from the list, and all of a sudden it's going to appear. So that's called autocomplete. And as long as there's some type of values, there's a connection between this list and this list, and that connection can be spaces, it can be text, it can be any type of value in a cell, but there has to be some kind of connection. I went into this in great detail, so if this is something that you want to learn, just look on my channel and for autocomplete, and you'll find something really great on that, or I went into a lot of detail. Okay, so that is why the reason I have these values here. All right, so that's a really easy way to quickly enter resources, and you can use that for any type of value. So it's a great way. All right, so let's move on. We have the ability to now show and hide tasks, and tasks is a very important part of projects that I wanted to make sure to get it in. The tasks have the ability to give a task name and assign to start date, days, as well as a status, which we can change just by selection. So the first thing we want to do is we have the ability to hide and show tasks. And so let me show you that. So on the hide task, I've assigned the macro called hide task, and of course on the show tasks, I've had the macro. And all we're really doing is taking columns K through P and showing them or hiding them. All right, into the developers. And so let's go ahead and take a look at how we got that hide task. So into the VBA we go, and we see inside our schedule max, we have the ability to have our show tasks right here. And it's just simple. It's, in fact, let me take these. I've got a brand new module, and I'm going to place them right in our task macros right here. This is where they belong. So we've got a specific module just for tasks, so I want to put them there. With sheet 1, of course, shapes show the task button. I've assigned names to these task buttons. If you take a look at the hide task group, that's the icon. I've given that called the hide task button here. You can see the name here. And of course, with the show task button, that specific group, the button in the icon, that is the show task button. So all we're doing is hiding and showing that accordingly, as well as the columns. So quickly, in the show task, we're going to make that hidden. We don't want the show task button to show up. And the hide task, we want to display that. And of course, we want columns K through P hidden equal to be false. We want them to show. And the hide task is simply the opposite of all of that. All right, so that's how we do that. So let's move on into the tasks. We have the ability to select a row and have those icons show up. That's really cool. How do we get those little icons to show up? Well, the first thing is I want those icons to show up on a selected row, and I need to track that row that we're selecting. And so I've put that specific row in the selected task row. That would be B8. So as we select a row, B8 is going to change from 4 to 5 to 6, or whatever row we select. I've added conditional formatting onto that, which you can see for yourself. It's the same. It's no different than the way I did the attachments. And so it's just based on that row. But how did I get these little icons to show up based on that row? Well, they're based on column P, and they're based on this row. And I have one group, actually. I've put them all together in a group, and I've called that task group. So we want to show or hide them on selection change. So when we go into the developers and we go to the on sheet code project manager, scroll down to selection change right here, we see something on selection of a task. If the user not intersections, if the user makes a selection between K4 and O26 is nothing, and K in the target row does not equal empty, then do something. Why do we have those two conditions? Those two conditions are if the user makes a selection in this row between K4, and we're going to go all the way down to O and 26. If the user makes a selection, that's one condition. The other condition, K, must have a value. So when you select something without a value in one of those, nothing's going to happen. But as soon as we select on something where K contains a value, then we get all the action. Then we get the row that moves over, and we get the icon group to display. So those are the two conditions. And if we look here, we will see that there's two. The first thing I want to do is place B8, we're going to put that target row in, B8, and next we're going to run a macro called show task icons, show task icons. So when we look in the task module, we have a macro called show task icons. A very simple. All we need to know is, of course, we need to know the task row, and of course, if B8, that's where our task row is located. If that is empty, right, there's nothing, we can't display it, so we're going to exit out of the sub. Assuming it's not empty, we can then assign B8 to the task row. And of course, with that group that I showed you, with that shapes group, right, we can position that. I'm going to position that based on column P and the task row on the left, and the top also P and the task. And then of course I want to display it. So the first two lines we are positioning it, and then the third line, we're going to actually make it visible. That's all I'm doing to that. Now what I've done is I've assigned 3 different macros to the 3 different buttons. One's called task pending, one's called task in progress. Process. A process is okay. I should probably change that to progress. Task in process. Progress. Let's go with progress. Progress. So we need to reassign that name. So let's do that now. I like task in progress. I guess process would probably work too. That would be this one with the yellow icon. So when we click here and select, right click that little one, and I'm going to right click, and then I'm going to assign the macro task in process. It's no longer that. I've changed that to task in progress right here, task in progress. Okay, so we've got that. And so what I want to basically do is I want to give a little bit of an icon. I want to give an icon to this column. That icon's going to do 2 things. It's going to change the color of this line, and it's going to save this information, that icon, in our project task database under status. It's going to save it right here. That is actually the icon. Let's change the font on that. That doesn't make much sense. But when we change the font to Wingdings 2, it's going to make a lot of sense. So let's change that to Wingdings. It only matters for visual, but it works just fine either way. So when we go into Wingdings 2, we are going to see that they're going to change to the appropriate symbols that we have. All right, so we've got that. Now we can see that. So when we make a change, it's saved, because I need to know when I reload that project, I need the statuses all to reload. So we have to make sure we save that too. Okay, so moving on. So when I select here, I want it, or select here, I want it to change, and when I select here, I want it to change. So that's very important. So I have 3 different types of icons. So if we look here, this icon is the task has not started yet. It's pending. That's this one right here. Task pending. But when I select in progress, I should click here, and I want it to change it to yellow. When I click the green one, that means it's completed, and I want to change that to green. We use conditional formatting to do that. Now, if you look here in the thumb, you see this is an R, so R is completed. Wingdings is the R. And of course, if we look here, the one that says in progress, we see this is like, actually it's the sense symbol, and of course if one is not begun yet, that would be pending, and that is the pound symbol right here. So that pound symbol is going to be displayed in that cell. So we have those 3, and that's exactly what we do in the macros. So let's go into the macros. So we have task pending, in progress, and complete. So we've got all 3 of those. Let me exit out of this cell here. Okay, let's change this. Mess that up. Okay, now it's complete. All right, so now we have those 3 here, these 3 macros right here: task pending, in progress, and complete. We're going to dimension the task row. Of course, that's in B8. We know that, but if B8 is empty, if B8 is not empty, then we can continue on. We need to make sure that B8 contains a row. The task row is B8, and all we're going to be doing is saying if sheet K and the task row does not equal empty, then we're going to take that pound symbol and put it right in O in the task row. We're going to run the same exact conditions in progress, except we're going to be changing it to the sense symbol. And of course, in the complete, we're going to be changing it to the R. These are the sense and the pound are actually the symbols in Wingdings for these little icons. So when we change it to incomplete or progress, it's going to change it automatically. And now all we need to do is we then need to use conditional formatting based on these symbols to change the colors. So when we highlight here and we go into conditional formatting and we click the manage rules, we can see a few different conditional formattings. And pretty much we have our main color is white, so we don't need to change that. So if it's white, nothing happens. But if the symbols are either completed or in progress, then we can change it. So green, remember what are, if O4 and R, if that condition is correct, if O4 equals R, and remember 4 is dynamic, so as long as our table starts in 4, R applies to starts in 4, it's going to carry it down to every single row in this range because we're starting at 4. So that's how we can apply that conditional formatting to every, because 4 is dynamic whereas O is fixed. O is the fixed row because it's got the dollar sign. It is absolute, the column is absolute while the row is dynamic. And we're going to color it green. And of course, if O4 is the cent symbol, we are going to color it yellow. So that's it. Now K4, if K4 is blank, then I want to apply K5 to, notice this doesn't start on the same row. Why is that? Because I want one empty line available always. So that means if K4 is blank, then color K5. If the one below, so that means as soon as we enter a value, the next one's going to be available. So this row always is available. There's always one available row as we work through it. So that's a really, really great feature that we have, so we can show these particular rows available, and it looks like our table grows, so it's a nice feature. All right, so we've shown you how to do the conventional formatting. We've shown you how to do that. We've shown you how to display these rows, and now let's see how we get these tasks to display based on a selected job. So all we're going to be doing something very similar to the project attachments. So let's move along to the project task and see what we have. We have a brand new database here. So what we're going to be doing is we have the ability to have a project number for every task. That's very important. We have a task name, the assigned to, a start date, the days, the status, which you just saw. We have an end date, and this is based on a formula based on the start date and based on the number of days. And we have the associated row, which is a formula very similar to what we have done before. So again, the basic thing I want to do is I want to put in a project number here. I want to make sure that the task name actually has a value. So I don't want to return anything that doesn't have a task name. So we've got the does not equal here. This ensures that every task name has a value when our filter results are here. Okay, so we've done that. So now in the code, all we need to do is run our advanced filter based on the same criteria. So let's take a look. Okay, into the project macros, we have something called load tasks, load task. And of course, we're going to load those. We're going to run that project load task. We're going to run this macro when we load the project. So what is in this macro? The first thing is we want to load last task row. I need to know the last row, and I need to know the last results row. Just like we do when we run any, we need to know the last row of the project tasks. We need to know the last row of the results. So that's very important, in the last row here. So we need to know all that. Let me shrink this up so you can see it a little bit better. Okay, so we need to know those last rows. So if we're going to bring the values over, we need to know the last row of the results, and we need to know the last row to run our advanced filter. All right, so moving on, B2 equals true. We're going to set the project load to true so we can make some things happen. K4, we're going to clear out any existing tasks. I want to clear out K4 all the way through P26. We're going to clear out, starting here, clear them all out, clear everything out all the way to P. I just want to delete all that, clear that out so we can put some new information in here. Next up, what I want to do is I want to put sheet 7 L3 equals I4. I'm going to put that project number right there for the criteria. That project number must go right here into L3 because we're going to run our criteria. And so we also need to get the last row. That's the next line of code. Sheet 7, we're going to clear out any previous results. Just like we do in advanced filter, we're going to get the last task row, the last row of the main data, because when we run our advanced filter, we need to know that. Now we're ready to run our advanced filter A2. We're going to use the header rows through H as the last column, run the advanced filter, copy it over. The criteria range L2 through M2. Remember, that is the project number, and of course, making sure that our project names have a value. We're going to copy it to P2, V2. That is going to run our advanced filter, P2 through V2. That's going to get our results. Next thing, we want to check the last row. The last row in this case is 6, but of course, if the last row is less than 3, that means we have no results, so we can skip the rest of it. So the last row is equal to sheet 7 P999, the last result row. If the last result row is less than 3, then go to no data. All right, next up, we're ready to bring over our information. K with sheet 1, remember we're focused on sheet 1 here, K4 through P in the last results plus 1. Why are we starting with plus 1? Well, our results row start here on row 3, but our results here are going to start in row 4. So I need to add 1 row because they start in different positions. Okay, so K4P, the last result, so equals sheet 7, our results, Q3 through V in the last results row. This is going to bring all of our results into our project information. Next up, we're going to reset B2 to true, and that's going to reset it. All right, so that's how we bring in the tasks all the way over here. That brings in all the tasks right here, brings them in there. And of course, we have our associated row 2. And of course, if we make a change to any of that, we need to change it. So we need to know, let me refresh that. I've removed that data here. So it's just going to show the information here. I removed that other sample. Okay, so we know now, but what if we make a change to this? We need to save those changes. If we change this to 3 days, I need to save that back in the database, right? Back in row 13, we just changed that today. So I need to make sure that sheet 13 gets updated to 3 days. So how do we do that? Well, that's in our change in our project code. If the user makes a change, right, on a task change, we're changing a task, but not on a new project, and we need to do something. So if there's a change between K, remember this is change, right? We're all the way up here, worksheet change, not selection change, but the user actually making a change. We're going to do something with that. So if they make a change between K4 and O26 and B2 is false, B2, of course, we need to make sure that the project load is not loading, because when it's loading, there's a change. And we also want to make sure B3. We don't want to do this on new projects. We don't want to run this when the project is loading. So both of those conditions must also be false. So assuming that all that is false and the user has made some sort of a change between K4, then I want to dimension the task row as long. Remember, our task row, the row of our original database, is located right here in column P, right here. So this is the row, and of course this is going to be hidden, right? You're going to change this font to blue so nobody will see it. The same here, it'll change this font to blue, nobody will see it. Okay, so now I know what row to make the changes. I know what row in the main database. If the user changes this to a different person like Lucy, we know that row 6 in our database must change in our project task. Row 6, we must change it here, Lucy Lee. It's got to be changed there. So we know this is column 3 that it must be changed on. What do we also know? We know what column is this. This is column, what column is this? This is column 12, right? So if we're making a change to column 12, then we need to know that that change must be on column 3 here, right? So all we need to do is subtract 9, and we know what column because they're in the same order. Name, assigned to, start date, dates, they're all in the same order. So we need to know that. So all I need to do is subtract 9. So let's take a look at that. If P in the target row value does not equal empty, that means it must have an existing task. It's an existing task, it's not a new one. Then the task row is P and the task row, right? We know the task row is right here. The task row is here. But what if there is no? But what if we add something and there is no task? What if we add something new? There is none. Then it's a new one. Then we need to assign a row. What row do we assign? Well, we're going to assign the first available row. In this case, it's 15, right? In this case, it's 15. So now we can assign a specific date, and we can assign a number of days. So we know, so it's going to assign a row one way or the other, whether it's a new, but if it's an existing, we can use the existing. If it's not else, that means it's a new task, then the task row is sheet 7, A, the last row with a value plus 1. That's going to be our first available row. And of course, if it's a new task, it does not have a project number. It doesn't have these formulas in it. So we need to add in those formulas. So we need to make sure that we do that. So we're going to first, so if it's a new one, we're going to add in the job number. We're going to put in A. We want to put in that job number in column A. I also want to put in the formulas that automatically adds the date to that. And I want to add the row formula. What is that? I want to add in these formulas right here. I want to add an if error, if they're D plus minus 1, then just empty blank. Okay, so I want to make sure that if there's any issue there or anything like that, blank. Okay, we could probably change that a little bit so that we don't get this issue here. I'll fix that up for you so we don't get an error. That error is because there's no date here, right? And there's no number here. So that's why we have that error there. But I'll fix that up. So we have that, right? And so we have this formula we need to add in, and we need to add in this formula. So we only need to add that when it's a new task. If it's an old task, it's already been added in. So we're only adding it on to new ones. And of course, sheet 7H gets the row column. And now I need to add in that task row. It's now that it's been saved, I need to take that task row and put it in P, right? I need to take that task. We know the task row now. I need to put it right here in P. I need to put that there so that we know that if we make any changes, we now know what row to make those changes are. So now it's been saved. We know if we're going to change the status or something, we know what row to change that on in the main database. All right, so now we have that. Now we know how it's done. Let's continue with the code. So we've handled the condition if it's an existing. We've handled the condition if it's new. So now for either new or existing, we're going to run this line of code, and that's going to update the task row. We know the task row now, new or existing. The target column, in this case, before it was 12, right? -9 is going to equal 3. So that is going to update the database. Using the existing column, -9 is going to equal the target value. So this way, I can use this same line of code regardless if it's a change to this, or this, or any of them. Because so if there's any change here, it's going to automatically change right here to these 4 columns. Right? These 4 columns are going to change based on these 4 column changes. So it's very, very easy. It's automated based on those columns. All right, great. I'm really glad I got to show you. That's how we update the database we have loaded. Next week, we're going to focus on a few more issues. We're going to show you how we did the conditional formatting. In fact, I'm going to show you how to update it because I don't love the conditional formatting for the way that I've done tasks, but there's a few ideas. So basically, I've given a conditional formatting where we have different colors based on the status, right? So based on the status, whether it's orange, so you see it's kind of a faded orange there, the little look there, a little fade there. I'll show you how to change that so you can put in whatever look and feel that you like. And if it's a green, yellow would be pending. All right, we're going to cover that next week. We've been over an hour. I don't want you to fall asleep on me. I always appreciate your likes and shares. You're doing great, and I really appreciate it. We're going to hit 3 million views very soon, and hopefully we'll get we got about 62,000 subscribers. So if you haven't subscribed yet, please do it. I appreciate that. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next week.